Welcome, my name is Isabella Brusati and I'm the founder of Isabella Brusati Consulting. In the next few videos I will be talking about the importance of social media and most of all the importance of getting the buy-in from senior executives and head of departments within your organization. Social media are all over the place and there are some companies that have embraced them very successfully. But what I'm noticing by talking to clients and talking to senior executives is that most businesses are still wondering what social media can do for them. In particular, in the next few videos, I will be talking about some of the problems that you may encounter if you want to introduce social media within your organization and the kind of myths and the kind of questions you may have to face in order to get your ideas through. I'm not saying that social media are the panacea for everything. That's not the case. I've been dealing recently with an individual who actually wanted to introduce social media in their organization. And even though I've explained them that, for example, social media should be 85% of informal conversation and only 15% sales, they actually decided that this was not relevant. We had to do exactly the opposite. So 85% sales and 15% basically just informal talk. Needless to say that their social media initiatives actually failed miserably. So it's not only implementing social media, but it's also implementing them correctly, understanding the way that they work. Social media are most of all a conversation. If you try to push a sales message, if you try to push the information and force an individual to watch, it's not going to happen. It's not like, a few years ago, just about 10 or 15 years ago, whereby, there were adverts on TV and people, yes, they could flick around channels, but most of all the message came from the organization to customers and potential customers. Nowadays, customers can actually choose. Also with reviews, with videos, they can actually help building the reputation of your company, being advocates, or actually they can be exactly the opposite. But first of all, we have to determine basically how you could sell, basically, a social media program that is genuinely going to be an advantage to your organization. One of the things that I've seen over the past few years are marketing specialists or digital marketers trying to sell a social media initiative by saying things like, oh, but our competitors are doing it. So what? Just because it works or maybe working for your competitor doesn't mean it is going to work for you. Or for example, now the latest craze is Instagram, so everyone has to have Instagram. Well, not necessarily, because not all products and not all businesses are actually suitable for Instagram. There may be some tools like Twitter or, for example, Facebook that could be more useful to your business rather than Instagram. For example, Instagram doesn't promote a lot of conversation, so unless you work as a photographer, or for example you work in an advertising company, or you work, for example, in the fashion business, if you are a bank, having Instagram is not necessarily a good idea. Of course, it depends on the outcomes that you want to achieve. So first thing, when you want to implement a social media strategy, of course, you will have to identify what are the tools that are more suitable for your organization. Just because there are 15 different tools that your competitors are using, it does not mean that those are the ones that you have to choose. Also, another thing that I noticed is that there is an underestimation on the complexity of dealing with social media properly in terms of budget and in terms of resources, because there are certain myths. And I am going to discuss in the next few videos more in detail those myths. But the first message that I would like to give is always make a good assessment and make sure that the social media strategy is in line with the business strategy. You would have to convince quite a lot of people before you can go ahead. It's not only the CEO, of course, depending on the size of the company. If you are a multinational company like most of my clients, you would also have to convince and basically get the buy-in, get the sponsorship also from head of departments that will be affected by that specific strategy, social media strategy. So for example, a good way is to get a balance between the risk and the benefits. Any kind of project that is going to be introduced basically is going to create change within an organization. Social media actually is a part of change management, even though some people say, really? Yes, really. So like every change management initiative, you are going to face some resistance to change. I am not going to change my way unless the reward of my effort is going to be higher than the effort. So basically, if the pain is higher than the gain, forget about it. But if the gain is higher than the pain, then I will think about it. So for example, if in your company one of the problems is to improve the customer service, actually there is a possibility, if used correctly, to improve the specific area by a strategic use of Twitter, a strategic use of Facebook. But in order to do that, you would have to do your homework before selling the idea to the customer service head and to the CEO or other senior executives. For example, by stating and showing that it's possible to decrease, for example, the customer service costs by 30%, or it's possible actually to decrease the customer complaints by 25%. But you gotta show that, not saying, oh, well, you know what, all our competitors actually are using Twitter and they are using Facebook, let's do it as well. It's not just to have Twitter and have Facebook, it's also how you use it. It's better not to have these tools, social media tools, if you're not going to use them correctly. Better not to have it if you don't know how to use them. If you decide to go ahead and basically implement social media strategy, make sure that you know exactly how you are going to use these specific tools. So align the social media strategy to the company strategy. I know it sounds obvious, but it's not always what people do. I mean, some people say, oh, well, you know, everyone is doing it, we want to do it as well. That's not a strategic goal. Just because my competitor is doing it doesn't mean that I have to do it. Exactly. So because it's always better to be ahead of the curve rather than following others. And also try to actually determine what are the advantages, so what are the benefits for the organization, and actually how their effort, so for example getting more resources working on a specific for example working on Twitter, you know, training on how to use Twitter, how to deal with customer complaints, etc., and basically the benefits that they're going to have. You will very likely encounter resistance to change, especially in companies that are more traditional. For example, in banking, insurance, they are starting to use social media, but things can go very, very badly. Like, for example, it happened just a few weeks ago with JP Morgan during a Q&A session that went very badly, or like it happened, for example, with Ryanair. So again, plan, align the social media strategy to the business strategy. Start small if required. Don't attempt to get 10 things going on at the same time. You can actually start testing a few and see how it's going, and then, you know, if you need to expand. Some people say, yeah, you know, but maybe I will not get the budget. Yes, but it's better actually to take a risk that you can manage rather than to get money for something that is doomed to fail. So again, you know, it's a balance, but most of all, try to get the buy-in. Like every change management strategy, if you don't get a strong sponsor and change agents, it's not gonna go. anywhere, because you will start facing a wall. And if this wall is actually made of senior executives, your social media strategy is going to be completely, totally and utterly dead. However, when you are going to sell, or actually you're going to propose, I always say sell because in the end of the day that's actually what we do when, you know, we are trying to implement projects. There are more politically correct way of putting it. So if you're going to propose a social media strategy, you are very likely going to encounter a series of questions that show the resistance to change, and in some cases also there are just you know, normal questions that everyone would ask when you are making a proposal that is going to cost money, that is going to require more resources, also in terms of physical and human resources, and that it's a little bit new, and maybe, you know, some people that are not very familiar with social media may be a little bit sort of concerned, saying, why do you want me to tweet, or why do you want me to use Facebook, or why we should have Pinterest, or why we should use, for example, StumbleUpon. So in the next video, we'll be talking about the most frequently asked questions when it comes to social media, and that you will very likely face when you are going to propose a social media initiative. Always think about social media initiative equal change management initiative, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. So hope that you enjoyed this video and keep on following me, because in the next one I will basically answer some of the most frequently asked questions and provide you with some ideas for answers. Of course, you have to customize it to the situation of your company, because there is not one answer fits them all. Thank you so much for watching.